Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. I'm Trevor, and on this channel, we talk all things BYU, Big 12, conference realignment, and all of that good stuff. And we're a little late to the party, but today we are taking a look at the latest on a proposal for a G5 playoff and what repercussions it might have throughout college athletics. But before we get into it, please be sure to like this video and subscribe. It is a big help in us to continue to grow the channel. Also, I've got to apologize if you hear any noises in the background. That is because we've got utilities workers out there laying new wires and everything for a new internet provider coming to my neighborhood, which is good because they've had a monopoly so far and our service isn't great. So hopefully that works out, but it might be a little bit annoying throughout the video. So what we're going to go through today and look at this article where I've highlighted some of the main points that stood out to me as I read it and discussed those. So let's pull up the article. All right, so here's the article from Denis Dodd. And the very first thing that stood out to me is right here in the headline where it says, financially backed by private equity firms. And now ever since Florida State kind of cracked that door open to bring private equity into college athletics, we've been seeing them show up more and more, like with the 80-team Super League, now with this G5 playoff proposal. And it's very interesting to see where it's going. And even though they're getting involved with proposals that I like, in theory at least, it'll be interesting to see what ramifications that is going to have that we're not really seeing at this point. That how is it going to impact college athletics? Will it all be good, and or where are the unintended or the unseen consequences from getting private equity involved? But we'll look at that a little bit more as we get into the article. So first of all, so this says it was all started by the disappointment felt by the group of five conferences: MAC, Mountain West, Sunbelt, American, and Conference USA. The Pac this week was also stripped of its classification as an Autonomy 5 school, so they've lost some of the the benefits that come with being designated as such. But they claim that they're going to continue to spend money and operate like a P5 program. So we'll see how that comes into effect. But so they're not listed here because I imagine those conversations happened prior to this event. So I think that I assume going forward that both Oregon State and Washington State would be included with this group. I think that most likely they'll be involved with the Mountain West, or whatever it looks like. I could see them being involved with something like this playoff. So something very interesting is that with the new CFP, that the group of five schools on average are going to be pulling in just a little bit more. They'll be at 1.8 million instead of the 1.5 million current payout that they receive. But what's very interesting is that they're actually receiving a much smaller piece of the pie. So they're going from 22% of all the revenue down to 9%, which for starters is just incredible. The CFP is bringing in that much more money that they can pay all those schools more money while cutting their piece of the pie drastically. So it tells you how much money is on the line here with the CFP. But even though the CFP, they're getting a little more money, even though the CFP is, you're growing this playoff, there's more spots, all things that you would think would be inclusive and make it a better environment for the group of five schools. It certainly has not. And we see that especially the Big Ten and the SEC continue to grow and kind of wrestle away more power, more involvement from all these other conferences, group of five, or even the Big 12 and the ACC. We see that they're going to be getting a much smaller piece of the pie than those two as well. And so the group of five came together, and I love this line: why would we sit around waiting for the inevitable? And I have to agree. It feels like Mike Oresco and some of the others throughout the last several years, everybody wanted to be involved. Nobody wanted to go off and do their own thing as a group of five, because that would essentially, draw that line in the sand and say, hey, we're doing something different. We're being involved over here. So that means we are different, and we don't really have a seat at the table with you guys at that top level, because we know that the American especially was notorious for really kind of dubbing itself basically a power conference, saying, there was a power six, and even though they really weren't. They don't have an autonomy, they're not part of the autonomy 5, now 4, and they weren't a power conference. And so they really wanted to hold on to that. But how long do you do that while the other conferences just continue to take advantage of you and take more and more, instead of, saying, that's it, we've had enough, we're going to go do our own thing. And I think that's the right decision. Financial involvement would be more than just funding a playoff. They're also looking at an 8-division champions would play at the end of the regular season for the group of 5's guaranteed CFP berth. And as I just mentioned, they are expecting significant dollars would be at stake. And so when they mean at stake, I don't know if they mean through the whole thing, or if by winning it, the program that wins would get significant money. It's a little short on all the details, but I think regardless, I agree that there's got to be money on the line for this. This sounds like it would be very interesting, especially in between waiting for some of the other games from the CFP and all that. If this was kind of a lead up to it, I think people would definitely be entertained and look for, and watch something like that. I know I would. Okay, it says such an arrangement would require the 62 teams contained in the group of 5 conferences realigning into 8-team divisions. Well, 62 isn't divisible by 8, but also I don't know how we got to that 62 number, because I went through and counted, looking forward with the teams that are expected to move into the conferences. We even have Delaware moving up, and a couple others. So I actually have us at 64, and then if you're including Oregon State and Washington State, it's actually 66. But either way, they're going to have to divide into about 8-team conferences. Maybe a couple have 9, unless Oregon State and Washington State do get left out, in which case it'll divide nice and evenly. It says the proposal will face the difficult hurdle needing to rework ongoing existing media rights deals with CBS, Fox, and ESPN, those networks owing the majority of Group of 5 media rights. One option would be pooling those rights into a single entity to be sold together. Private equity would then get a percentage of the new TV deal. So private equity I don't know why they would be getting a percentage of this. Are they putting in the initial investment up front? And I don't know why that would be different than any existing TV deals or things of that nature, and why private equity would have to get involved. So I'm not really sure. If you do know that, or have an idea of what this is alluding to and why it would be different, please let me know in the comments, because I do not know the answer to that. And then it says the new divisions would be realigned geographically, in part to benefit Olympic sports. And I don't know if this would have to be an all sports thing. I wonder if this could be just football, and then you allow the conferences to align however they want for all the other sports. And I would say, to keep traditional rivalries alive. But right now, the group of 5 has been picked apart and realigned and everything so much that you don't really have nearly as much of that, but still allow the conferences to align how they want for the Olympic sports. But for this, do football differently, I guess is what I'm saying. All right, so it says unanimous approval from the 5 conferences would be required to move forward with this deal. So that's interesting. I don't know. It's yet to be seen how much support there is amongst all the conferences for doing something like this, but I have to imagine that if the money's there and they can get their ducks in a row, that everybody would sign off on this. I would think so, especially at this point. And here it said, at the very last line, it proposed, I talked about a separate proposal for an NIT kind of best of the rest postseason tournament. I guess this is kind of the same. I don't know if there's overlap, but maybe they want to do something that's specifically just for the group of 5, and that's their way to earn their way into the CFP. I think that's really cool. And that, I mean, think of it, if you had an NC State type situation. They're not a G5 program, but that, you know, played in through the tournament and then that went into March Madness. So if you had a situation like that, that would definitely, you know, get people's attention. So again, I don't know if these two ideas overlap or conflict enough, but I like that idea. I think the big difference is NIT brings in everybody, whereas this proposal I think is specifically just the group of 5. And so they might want to keep that separate, saying, hey, you guys already have access. You guys get so many spots. We only get one. We want to keep this specifically group of 5. And actually, I think that's a good idea. All right, so those are our thoughts on the proposal for the group of 5 playoff. I think it's a good idea. Again, this article was still pretty short on particulars, but I think doing something along these lines would be really smart in a way for the group of 5 to kind of protect themselves and find additional source of revenue and keep their programs relevant, which could help them with recruiting and just kind of staying afloat and continue to compete at the highest level possible for those programs. So let me know what you think of this proposal and if you think it could be successful, and if you're for it, and let me know that. And again, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. And as always, go Cougs.